Hey everyone, I'm Alexis Rosado, and I'm here accompanied by
Mayor Ron Bacon, Mayor of East Lansing.
Mayor of East Lansing. Welcome to Community Conversations. Our focus is creating a brave space for leaders and members of the community to talk about ways to impact our city for the better. Super grateful to Foster. We're at Foster Coffee Shop, Foster, where there's fostering community. So if you see us drinking that, that's where we're at today in East Lansing. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been an action-packed week, getting ready for a home game weekend, which is always exciting around here. So that's our next big thing coming up here. And it's also for high school. This week it's homecoming for them. So we have homecoming parade, and we'll have MSU v Minnesota this weekend. So it's going to be exciting.
So many people don't know this, but Mayor Ron Bacon and I actually have known each other when I first moved to Lansing 7 years ago. But many people usually view leaders as products instead of people. And so I wanted to start us off by creating a space where you could be authentically you. And so if you wouldn't mind, I want us to warm up with rapid fire questions. Does that sound cool to everybody in the house?
Absolutely.
Super simple. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and then you're just going to fire off and answer them.
Don't judge me.
What's your favorite color?
Go green, of course.
Favorite food?
Usually seafood or something free.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Remember the Titans.
Favorite music artist?
Prince, of course.
Prince. Most recent book you've read?
I'm pretty light. I read clinicals and that kind of stuff for work, so I spend most with comic books, Marvel, nerdy things, and stuff like that to clear my brain.
See, you're getting to know the real person. Best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Yeah, I tell everyone this, and I was in a young entrepreneurs meeting today, and they say I've always been told if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So be at the table.
We can snap it up for that. I like a snap culture. Let's give it up for Mayor Ron Bacon. You've officially completed my hot seat. Pretty simple. Okay, let's get into the reason why we're here. Learning a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Did you grow up in this area?
I grew up in this region, and actually in my younger years, I spent quite a bit of time out in this area causing trouble as a young man. I'm from Jackson, Michigan originally, and anyone from this region probably spent time hanging out in East Lansing underage or doing something. So I was one of those people. After that, I attended college at Saginaw Valley State, a couple degrees there, social science, criminal justice, and I have a master's in leadership from up there. And I also played football for multiple years, and now back down here, living for about now 20 years, coaching high school football, working, living, and being a part of the community.
Now, your background is actually in biology, biotech?
It's complicated. My background's in social science, but somehow ended up career-wise in biotechnology. I've worked for major biotechnology firms for about 25 years, health and human services, health science, that whole thing for 25 years now. I've worked in probably every phase of pharma, biotech, from reimbursement to area management to kind of everything in that 25 years. And it's weird saying that out loud that it's been 25 years because that's gone fast.
So what was the catalyst to make you apply to be the mayor of East Lansing? What was the catalyst?
Wow.
A
lot of people probably weren't following very closely at that time. This was deep in the heart of the pandemic. We had a couple members of council depart kind of in rapid succession, and there was quite a bit of instability at that time. And people were just kind of like, there's just so much turnover and so much inconsistency and so much all these just kind of things that were kind of tainting the process. So they did a full open application process. There was 23 people who applied to join council via an appointment. And at that time, myself and councilperson Dana Watson were the appointees from that process. And from that point forward, we both ran for re-election and were reseated into the seats that we sit in now. So that's been almost 2 years.
So did you ever see yourself being a mayor?
Oh, geez. That's always it gets asked a lot. It's a weird question because I don't think anyone sees themselves being a mayor. I saw myself participating, and it's kind of what I push, particularly for there's some young people here, and I was always involved. I sat on Human Rights Commission. I sat on several boards and commissions, the MLK Commission, East Lansing Educational Foundation. I've always been involved, but I'm not sure I totally understood what this would entail, and kind of the day-to-day of it. But actually, the pandemic was useful for that. We spent quite a bit of time virtual. It allowed me to work out some of the bugs and kind of learning even all the rules of order and different processes, ordinances, resolutions. I learned that from my basement. So by the time we brought this out into public and came back live, I had a feel for it. But as far as wanting to be mayor and even envisioning it, no, I never had any ambition for that, just to kind of help people and stay involved.
And you and I had talked, and you said something along the lines of the background, though, has really helped you in your position, the science background.
Yeah, I'm very clinical. I look for kind of the efficacy of things and do they actually work, and I'm really open to what we do quite a bit, and we look at things in phases and 1, 2, 3 and kind of go through there, and I'm really open to stopping something at any point. I don't have ego when it comes to things that we try to do as a city. If we get to a certain phase and then it's not producing kind of the results that we anticipate, I'm fine shutting it down and moving on to the next thing. And it's just kind of the clinical nature that I bring to this. It's very low ego, because none of it's very personal. It's just about ultimately the outcome. That's also deeply tied to my coaching background. Ultimately, you kind of win or you lose, and at the end, you got to count it all up and decide, did you win or did you lose? So,
what does a mayor actually do?
Day to day.
Give us a day in the life.
Yeah. Many times there's a lot of performative things that we do as mayor, obviously ribbon cuttings and signings and different things, educationally, schools, working with young people and the community, and hearing complaints and those types of things. We sit with most of the boards and commission, myself and my council counterparts. We sit with maybe the downtown or with the art commission, human, let's see, what's our human, it was the HRC, so I sat on that for years. So we sit with these different commissions, and then mostly we get the legislative agenda together, and then the city manager, we're in a city manager system, so the city manager then attempts to the best of their ability to execute the strategies or the legislative strategy of council and of the mayor. So it's a manager-mayor partnership.
What is a misconception people have about your position or city council?
Yeah, I think they consider strong mayor systems. You see some systems around where the mayor is the CEO or the bottom line governor of whatever. We're just a legislative arm, and then sometimes even an advisory position to things we don't have any, and we have 2 employees. We have the city attorney and the city manager. Everyone else works for the city manager and works for the city system or for the unions inside of that system. So we have very little say on what they do organizationally. Our big mechanism for change typically is budget, and that's where we go in and can make some substantive changes. And I think this council and most good councils typically believe budgets are kind of moral documents, and they express how you really feel about the importance of what you want in your community.
What are some of the interests that you care about?
There's a bunch of them. I mean, first and foremost, and we're having challenges right now and working through different areas of public safety. That's the backbone of kind of everything we do. If we have to have public safety, security, and those types of things to even anchor to the things that I love the most. I'm big on parks. I love downtown business and the business district. I consider this area that we're in right now, where Foster Coffee is and where the other downtown business, I consider this a neighborhood. So I try to treat them with the same thought process that we do for all the neighborhoods and all the different neighborhood associations when we're making decisions for the area. We have some big challenges with housing, like everyone else in the state does. That's going to be something we're going to have to tackle together, because I think housing may be the crisis of our era that we're kind of on a collision course with, both affordability and availability. And then obviously a big town gown is the big thing here. We have to have a working relationship with Michigan State. It's unique to be in a Big Ten town versus even any other college town, and just being successful in the town gown relationship and keeping the neighborhoods happy, keeping Michigan State happy, and keeping the downtown happy, and blending it into one community and one ecosystem. So it's very, very unique.
You're leading into my next question.
Let's do it.
What do you see are the biggest challenges ahead for the city over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, one of them is really a positive challenge. We're looking at kind of exponential growth at this point.
That is good.
We could literally, the things that East Lansing's attracting now, we can grow at any rate that we kind of want to, and part with our partners and business partners and community and that type of thing. But we have to also sustain the ecosystem and understand Michigan State's growing rapidly. They had their largest freshman class in history. We're growing simultaneously in business and development. We're looking at other building projects and all that type of thing. We have to make sure our growth is sustainable, make sure we're creating environments that are safe for communities to live in, and then try to avoid the conflicts that naturally occur between the inner workings of the neighborhoods, traffic, and all those types of things. So those are the kind of things we're coping with right now, and figuring out how to go from a small town maybe to a larger town. So that's going to be a tricky one going forward.
If someone is looking up to you right now, what advice would you give them if they desire to serve in a political role one day?
Start somewhere. And a really easy place, particularly for our university students, is boards and commissions. Find different boards and commissions. They have an absolute, in their advisory capacity, they're unelected. You can get yourself appointed very easily to boards and commissions, and that voice is very powerful, kind of to move agendas, to shape the agendas. And I was always told, particularly for young people, you always want to avoid kind of the tyranny of the old on the young. And that's what happens when we don't have enough young people involved in things. You'll see, and we're seeing it kind of on a national scale and at state and city level sometimes, where you're seeing things come to fruition that are going to negatively impact the people who have the furthest to go. So I think it's important that younger voices get into this in any way possible. When you see different, when you see there's hearings, when you see there's one coming up on Michigan Avenue, and they're like, hey, they post it, and it usually misses young people, and then they're going to design something that's going to impact you probably forever as you live somewhere, and you didn't have a say in it. So always keep your eyes peeled for just the opportunities to do those public conversations, charrettes, or whatever they want to call them, and all those. Just be present and be involved.
I think you're touching on something huge, which is, why should the next generation be involved in government?
Oh, my
Why
goodness.
is it important?
I for my work on the MLK Commission, I've gotten to meet civil rights icons from across the board, and it's really, I think sometimes young people lose track of just how young the people who actually changed the nation were, both militarily, our civil rights, our social rights, our rights for LGBTQ, race, gender, religion. All these things were shaped by people as young or younger than anybody at this university. There's people 15, 16 years old who were in these movements that changed the world. And I think something occurred along the way, and I blame my generation a little bit. We were coasting a little bit, and a lot of stuff got away from us, and we apologize. But the real issues of our time are going to have to be served, being climate, housing. We left a lot on the table for this next generation. So I just say start, get involved, and these are really tough issues, but if we're going to make it, it's going to require youth, it's going to require energy, and you guys have a longer runway, and I just know you can solve these problems. And what I always say about East Lansing particularly, the answers are already here. There's probably someone across the street that solved this problem in a white paper and stuck it in a drawer somewhere. If we've got a problem, the brain power's here, the commitment's here, even the finances at times are here. We can solve our own problems, and the answers are here.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That it's potentially on a sheet of paper in someone's drawer.
Probably. Yeah, a lot of smart people.
It's interesting because when you talk about the MLK Commission, I got to interview a ton of legends for videos for you all. And I remember during some of those interviews, people were talking about when they knew Dr. King when he was 16 years old.
Yeah.
They were like, I remember he was this eager boy at church. And that's a good point, that we're within the age demographic, even myself included, to create change for the next generation. So that's awesome.
I'll even add to that. I think anyone who's come to this university or this area, this is an apex for change. Like, there are icons. There's Martin Luther King's been to that high school. Martin Luther King's been to that university. The school integrated college football. This school helped integrate refereeing. The schools around here, this is the home of Malcolm X. There's sort of a change I don't even know what to even call it. This place is built for change, and so many leaders have come from this area and great change agents, and I know they're still here, and the spirit of change is here. I think if it's going to come, it's going to come out of Lansing region and out of East Lansing in particular.
We're going in so many directions. There's so many questions I want to continue asking you, but what does fostering community mean to you?
Yeah, I think we're getting better at it. I think it's meeting people kind of where they're at and asking them what they need. I think for cities and even me in corporate America and different things, we design things and then we try to fit it to the people. We never actually ask them what the need was or what does the community need or what's next for the community. We just start building stuff and hope we luck up and something fits, round peg, square hole type of thing. I think we're getting more into the spirit of inclusion and really asking what does this look like? Ask people before you, measure twice, cut once kind of thing. I think that spirit became literal as in materials. As materials go up, people become a little less, kind of eager to do things like, let's hear that again, and what's it going to cost, and this, that, and the other. I think we're doing that on an interpersonal level now and really we want to know different cultures, different religions, like, why is this like this? I think at least some people do, and obviously reflexively. There's some people who are choosing to go the exact opposite direction, but I think the leaders, ultimately, the leaders are going to come from wanting to know about other people, sitting down, having one-on-one conversations like this, and sitting down with people you don't agree with is going to be the key moving forward. If we can totally disagree and we can walk away and not agree forever, but we can agree to respect each other and do some of those things and getting some civility back into these debates and conversations, I think that'll change everything.
I totally agree with that. And cultivating community and conversations help create that. So right now, everything I'm doing is funneling through a nonprofit. Speaking of problems,
Yes.
Mental health is huge,
Yes.
especially after the pandemic. And so Brave Space we created that works with youth and community leaders to create vulnerable spaces like this to have conversations. But we get to work in schools with students who battle suicide ideation and mental health issues, which is really high. So has mental health ever impacted you directly, Mayor Ron Bacon?
Yeah, I mean, my family's coming from Jackson. Everyone from my family works in either corrections. We were a law enforcement family, and we're a military family. So most of the men and even women that I was around, I was kind of raised in that American Legion setting and around people in the military. And I think that generation didn't even know where to begin. But you could see now in retrospect, I can look back on kind of that Vietnam era and other eras, and I saw now what I recognize as mental health. And they would have called it something else, or rigidity, or maybe it came out as heavy drinking or other things. But I saw a lot of mental health, particularly for members of the military and people who work in those high stress environments. So yeah, it's very real. We're really working hard on it here, particularly with our law enforcement and public safety, their mental hygiene, to make sure that they're with some kind of early warning systems that kind of tell us when people have been exposed to multiple traumas. If you're going, for example, our police department, if you're going call to call and you end up exposed to multiple, say, car accident, baby not breathing, that kind of thing, and multiples of those in a row, the human psyche is not designed to do that all the time. And we have some early warning systems in place more to protect our officers and the people who see so much trauma, and even fire and EMTs and that kind of thing. They see stuff that we might see once in a lifetime, multiple times a day. So there is a component of mental health, and I work with young people at the school, and I think we talked about this. I've coached high school football for many years and youth football. I've never seen these levels of challenges with mental health that I'm seeing right now with young people post quote unquote pandemic, and just everything. This is probably the challenge of our time is mental health and getting some capacity built to help people.
Is there anything we have in East Lansing that relates to mental health, or if it's not a strength, is there anything that the community can do to offer insight?
We're building it. That's why we included some social workers in our police department, and even our community police officers, who are kind of our, almost customer-facing officers, unarmed. They go out and kind of try to head off things, look for patterns in certain things, as different from what our law enforcement officers do. But we need more soldiers. We can't have enough. We have so many young people. Like I said, our university's growing. All of our high schools and schools are revamped and growing. We're the school of choice area for this region. We're growing literally with housing, building, and everything else. So the capacity, we're not there. We're not, and it's concerning, and it's going to be a top priority. I put public safety, obviously housing, security, food security second, but mental health right there in the same block with that. No, we do not have the capacity built yet.
And that's where we can all as a community be a part. And things like this, conversations, and even creating community is actually a part of a systematic way of helping people interpersonally. And so if we're healthy, if we're having conversations, if we're feeling a part of a community, it's really good. It creates a really healthy culture as individuals, but then also as a community to make an impact and change.
You have to ask me a happy question.
So I'm so glad you're here.
Those are tough questions.
I'm like, what does I was going to say, what does vulnerability mean to you? But if I recall, you're all about transparency and people winning. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What does vulnerability or transparency mean to you?
Yeah, it means a lot of different things at different times. And I think in the political environment, I think sometimes go like, well, transparency means you just show your hand and show things all the time and whatever, and everything's just out there. I think it's a little different than that. I think there is an element of things being well thought out, being thoughtful, and I think more not necessarily being thoughtful with your whatever you're trying to, the outcome you're seeking, just kind of letting them know your process and talking them through it, and letting, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking. Am I thinking on the right path? How will this impact the people around? I think asking those questions as you go versus getting to what we tend to do a lot in local government is get a finished product and then go back and ask questions afterwards, and then we've missed so much. And we even do it now in different resolutions and different things we do as a community. We have a lot of misses. But I think the more we talk through the process, the more we seek advisory. We have almost every type of commission here. There's transportation, there's the DDA, there's anything you can think, arts, where there's a commission for it with experts on it. So hopefully we always seek expert opinion, and then we just kind of have it's hard to do, it's really hard, but have the debates in public and have real public conversations, and it's sometimes painful to sit in there and have those conversations in public and kind of lay yourself bare, but that's part of the job.
Well, I appreciate the way you have conversations in transparency. It's interesting, on my notes, you had said that vulnerability is letting people know that I care. I want everyone to win.
Oh, yeah. No one cares what you know until they know that you care. So that's kind of how you got to, and people know the difference. There's no way to mask it. You know when someone's just doing something to get a commitment or to make you compliant or pliable versus when they're actually trying to find a solution that's a win-win. It feels totally different. As someone who's done sales and that type of thing, I know if the person buys, it's better than if I sold it. So I'd rather have you buy something than me sell it to you, because I can only sell it to you once. You can buy as many times as you feel comfortable about your decision, and we educated you, and you're like, I feel good about that decision. I don't have remorse or buyer's remorse about felt pushed into that. So sometimes it means slowing down. For me, which is hard, I'm kind of a driver, so sometimes it does mean I have to slow down and kind of measure again or scale down my expectation, and that's just part of it. And that sometimes is the better option. I was always told in government, if it's a good deal, then both sides should be dissatisfied. That's usually a good deal in government.
Interesting. I feel like this is a good opportunity to have questions from the audience. Any questions out here?
Feel free to shout them out.
Can you hand this mic over there?
Yeah, you talked about the next 5 to 10 years, attraction and growth. So it's a two-part question. What do you think are the reasons behind that growth, and then how are you thinking about supporting, encouraging, and getting out of the way as a government for that growth?
Yeah, we're going to be really proactive with that, and I think that's going to be the really next thing, and I don't want to show my hand too much at this point, but our interface as a community is not that great, and it's more, we have some good stuff on the back end. It feels almost like a website. Like we have all these things and all these goods and services and things we could be getting to people, and they're not quite reaching the business base, the customer base, even the neighborhood base. So we have to change kind of how we interface is the first part. And then the reason to grow in East Lansing is just, we have we have so many things. We have culture, we have an educated populace, we have good schools, we have great people. We have so much to offer. So it's just a matter of, I talk to many people inside. I'm like, they tell me what they have to offer. I'm like, does anyone know this exists? Kind of thing. So there's some of that going on. We have more to offer than we're actually getting out to the public at this point. So somehow fixing that customer facing, which I consider anyone who lives in the community, as well as listening. We'll be out and doing a lot more listening and finding out kind of what the real needs are, how we can grow smart, and what that's going to look like. So you're going to see a lot more of us facing you guys. So.
Can I ask a third question?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you mentioned kind of like the parties, the neighborhoods, the downtowns, the districts, Michigan State. How do you think about creating cohesion or collective identity with so many interests and so many groups?
Yeah.
Great question.
That is the question that's asked. I was able to attend at least a small piece of the Big Ten City Managers meeting. It was held right here in the Graduate. Exact same challenge everywhere. So I mean, say Penn State, Iowa, they're all kind of asking the same question, and then that town and gown is the big one. How do you link all this together? And then not many other cities are then linked to their capital city, say Madison maybe, or certain places. Like, we have a unique ecosystem here. So I think asking the right questions, and we have to be intentional. I think I was given a good example about this Fostered Coffee being right here. Was very intentional to put this here and this brand here and what it represents here. And we have to do that in other places and be attractive. And I've said many times, we're going to do a lot more on retention as much as we do on attraction. And I think that's going to be a big part of it. We need to retain more of our kind of students who stay here a little bit longer before they go on to their next thing. We need to retain the integrity of the neighborhood simultaneously, and we need to build new types of housing, be it graduate housing, workforce housing, to encompass all the stuff that's coming via the FRIB, the battery, the battery things that are coming. Obviously, chip manufacturers will be next, and all the things that are going to come here. We have a lot of interest that we have to coordinate. So we'll get experts. We'll seek consultation. We'll do that from everything from public safety, how our infrastructure is laid out, where there's opportunities to change infrastructure and do things differently, we'll do that, and where we have to just do some adaptation, we'll do that as well. I think we're really open, and we'll listen to experts.
So you mentioned that we don't quite have the capacity for all of the mental health needs around East Lansing right now. So my question is, how do you plan on building that capacity in the next few years?
Yeah, I'll plan to be a partner in that. I think that's one of those things that's going to be, I'd say, federal, state, one of those real deep collaborative things. We have to prioritize it the exact same way. Obviously, we're going to have to prioritize law enforcement, some of these systems that have been under a great deal of stress, teachers under a great deal of stress, nurses. I know through the pandemic, I know people who just stopped seeing people or can just cut their load down so low, because it was the level of things that we're seeing through the pandemic were so traumatic, like they felt like they needed extra time. So we've lost some people in the profession even for mental health, a lot of burnout and a lot of those things. So it's gonna take an intentional rebuild for many professions, and mental health is one of them. In the meantime, being collaborative with other organizations. There's organizations, we have plenty of them in Health and Human Services that we partner with, and we give community development block grant dollars to and that kind of thing. And we're going to just probably need a little bit more out of them to help us support. But unfortunately, some of the same people who do mental health deal with homelessness, deal with food insecurity, they're doing so many parts of this thing right now. Like I said, it's one of the three-pronged challenges of our time, but we're going to have to be intentional with how we build them out and kind of reload. And like individuals like yourself who are interested in that field and going to take it on, and then we have to do some things in retention so we don't burn out the individuals while we're still building out capacity. So similar to the other question, it's that someone actually said, and it really struck me, they were like, the very thing you're trying to build is going to create the problem that you're trying to solve. Like that middle ground is where it's really painful. Like I said, for example, when you're working out, you're almost always tired. You're like laying on your couch, but you're actually building capacity. And that's kind of where we're at. We're all like really tired, but I think we are building capacity and retooling. But this part's not going to feel good, and there's not a good political thing to spin this on here. It's going to take hard work, and it's going to be very uncomfortable while we build back some of these areas that have been torn down through the pandemic and beyond that, years of neglect. So, yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
How do you see the role of Michigan State in helping you rebuild that capacity and kind of retaining those, as you said, young people that are interested in those fields?
It's my happiest thing to see 11,000 new entrants into the community, maintaining higher ed and attaining higher degrees and learning and doing those types of things. I think that's the hope, that people will continue to go into some fields and professions, and there's some work we got to do there, because some fields and professions now are becoming cost prohibitive for you to go into that. You have to go into a higher paying field or profession in order to pay for the high cost education that you just financed, kind of thing. So we have to figure out a way to bridge that and get people back into professions that also add value. There's nothing wrong with going out and making a lot of money if that's your profession, but not all of us can go do that. There's just some professions that are going to require, that bring other intrinsic values outside of money. We have to find a way to encourage people into those professions, and I don't know what that quite looks like. That's a us problem beyond East Lansing, but we got to find a way to encourage people back into the professions that make everything run. For example, for a city, if trash isn't picked up one day, that's when the phone starts ringing. There's a whole bunch of stuff we cannot do for multiple days in the city, but I bet trash better get picked up, or the mailbox. So it's something you take for granted. And I think that's what happened with mental health, with education, with law enforcement, with EMS, fire, all these things, and they've eroded, so we have to figure out a way. That's going to take the entire collective.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Does the media team have any questions? Okay. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think just to encapsulate everything, I just look forward to partnering well beyond this time as being mayor. It's an honor to be mayor, and it's an important role, but I think we all fill a very important role, and I consider everyone in the city advisory to mayor, to council, to the city manager, to all our boards and commissions. This is a collective brain trust here in East Lansing at Michigan State University, and I always tell everyone, I think the solutions are here already. We just have to tap into them, and like the question earlier, like where are we headed and what does that look like? I may not have it, but I bet a student and about 18-year-old solved this problem years ago, and we just haven't tapped into that brain trust just yet. And we're open, we're looking for you, and we won't discriminate. Wherever the good ideas come from, we're going to use them, we're going to take them, we're going to apply them.
And what's the best way for the public to communicate with their local government?
Easy. We read every single email correspondence, every single thing you send over. All of our email and phone numbers are right on the website for the City of East Lansing. Feel free to reach out to us. If you have a specific interest, there's probably a board or commission that does that. Attend their meetings, become part of that ecosystem for them where you're showing up and they're like, oh my goodness, that person's here again. And it works, and we have some other individuals here who will tell you that works. I say agitation works, there's just no way around it. And so continue. If you find something you're passionate about, please agitate around it. Keep pushing your elected officials, push me. I don't take it personal. In the chair that the mayor sits on can handle it. Even when I feel like I can't, it doesn't matter. You're allowed to. That's your civic right. That's why we vote. And I'll jump right into that, particularly for our young people. Vote. Get signed up to vote. I think yesterday or the day before was National Voting Day or Voting Registration Day. So please vote and get involved. And once you vote in at a certain level, then the nation starts to pay attention. You just need to tap that number, and then they'll come ask you what you need to do next. You got to get past the old people first.
That's so good. No, we want to encourage you, if you're here or if you're watching and you see this, civic engagement matters and your voice matters. And so voices, these community conversations, hopefully spark an interest in you, and you get to communicate with your local government to create change. And so we encourage you to do that. Thank you so much, Ron Bacon, Mayor Ron Bacon, for being here.
Thank you all. And remember that the last mayor was half my age, so this job's open to anyone.
Let's give it up, let's give it up, let's give it up. Thank you, Foster Coffee Shop, for having us here.
Thank you all.
Good.